Have you ever wondered if a building could be more than just bricks and stone? If it could hold trapped souls and dark secrets of the past? Tonight, we take you inside one of the most haunted prisons in America, the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, where anyone who spends a night often comes back changed, or doesn't come back at all. So brace yourself, prepare your courage, and get ready, because this story is not for the faint of heart. Philadelphia was wrapped in a cold, misty night. A heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. In the middle of the city, looming over the streets with its crumbling Gothic walls, stood the Eastern State Penitentiary. Locals whispered that at night, the ghosts of long-dead prisoners roamed its halls, and anyone daring enough to spend time inside would feel the full weight of its haunted history. Ethan Harper, a 28-year-old investigative journalist and paranormal enthusiast, had always been fascinated by haunted places. He decided he would spend the night alone inside ESP, documenting everything. Armed with his camera and flashlight, he approached the massive iron gates of the penitentiary, feeling a chill that seemed almost alive, as if unseen eyes were watching him. He stepped inside cautiously. The heavy iron doors groaned, and his footsteps echoed eerily throughout the empty hallways. The peeling paint on the walls gave a sense of decay, and shadows seemed to twist unnaturally. Ethan shined his flashlight down each corridor, peering into the small barred windows of the cells. Occasionally, he thought he saw a figure watching him from the darkness. He moved toward the isolation block, the most feared part of the prison. Tiny barred windows, narrow beds, and remnants of prisoners' belongings filled each cell. Ethan switched on his camera and took his first step forward. A floorboard creaked loudly beneath him, and his eyes caught a shadow moving across the wall. His heart raced, but he forced himself to remain calm. As the night deepened, a sudden gust of wind swept through the hallway, causing a heavy cell door to slowly close on its own. Ethan trained his flashlight on the door just as a pale figure appeared, drifting toward him with glowing eyes. A whisper reached his ears. "Why are you here? Now you belong to the penitentiary." The shadows along the corridor seemed alive. Objects trembled, bookshelves shook, and floorboards echoed the presence of invisible footsteps. Ethan gripped his camera tightly and decided to press forward. He reached the central hub of the penitentiary, where all the radial corridors converged. A broken chandelier hung from the ceiling, casting strange, flickering shadows on the walls. Ethan felt an unnatural presence, as if the prison itself were alive, filled with the stories and lingering souls of those who had suffered here. As he took another step, whispers and footsteps came from multiple directions at once. A shadow slowly emerged from a wall, reaching out with unseen hands. Ethan felt a creeping force pressing against him, chilling him to the bone. By the first hour, he realized that this prison was more than just haunted. It was a living nightmare, a place where the memories and torments of past prisoners were trapped forever. Yet, despite the terror, Ethan's curiosity pushed him forward. He couldn't leave. Not yet. Ethan moved cautiously through the radial corridors, his flashlight flickering with every step. The shadows seemed to follow him, stretching unnaturally across the walls. The air grew colder, heavy with the scent of damp stone and decay. Every creak of the floorboards made his heart race. As he turned a corner, he saw a cell door slowly creak open on its own. A faint, ghostly figure appeared inside. It was a man in a tattered prison uniform, his eyes hollow and glowing faintly in the darkness. Ethan froze, unsure if it was real or his imagination. The figure raised a trembling hand, pointing at him, and whispered in a voice that seemed to echo from the walls themselves, "You don't belong here." Suddenly, objects began to move. A small chair slid across the floor, books tumbled from the shelves, and a gust of cold wind blew through the hallway. Ethan's flashlight wobbled in his grip, casting erratic shadows that made the figures appear closer than they were. He pressed forward, trying to stay calm. As he entered the east cell block, the paranormal activity intensified. Whispering voices surrounded him from every direction. Some voices were soft and pleading, others were angry and threatening. He could see shadows darting in the corners of his eyes, but whenever he turned, there was nothing there. A loud bang echoed down the hallway. Ethan spun around and saw the massive doors of the isolation cells slamming shut by themselves. Panic surged, but he reminded himself to stay focused. He raised his camera and began recording, hoping to capture the evidence. In one of the cells, he saw a pale woman in tattered clothing, floating inches above the ground. Her long hair obscured her face, but when she turned, Ethan glimpsed hollow eyes staring directly at him. He heard her whisper, almost pleading, "Leave, before it's too late." The walls themselves seemed to pulse. Ethan felt as if the building was breathing around him, alive with trapped souls. His flashlight flickered and then died, plunging him into darkness. The whispers turned into screams, echoing from every corner of the penitentiary. In the pitch-black hallway, Ethan felt invisible hands brush against his arms and back. He stumbled forward, heart pounding, desperate for an exit. Then, faint moonlight spilled through a broken window, illuminating the central hub. Figures were emerging from every corridor, their ghostly forms moving toward him in silence. Ethan realized that this was no ordinary haunting. The penitentiary itself was a cage, feeding on fear, trapping anyone who dared to enter its walls. Every shadow, every whisper, every moving object was a warning. And yet, he had to keep going. There was no turning back now. With trembling hands, Ethan switched on a backup flashlight and focused on the far end of the hub. A narrow passage leading to the old warden's office appeared. If he could reach it, perhaps he could find clues, perhaps even an escape. But as he stepped toward it, a low growl echoed from the darkness, and the shadows twisted violently, blocking his path. He swallowed hard, taking a deep breath. His only choice was forward. Every step took him deeper into the heart of the penitentiary, into the darkness where past and present collided, and where the ghosts of Eastern State Penitentiary waited, hungry for those who dared enter. Ethan's hands shook as he moved deeper into the old warden's corridor. The air was thick, almost suffocating, carrying whispers that seemed to crawl along the walls. Every step echoed through the empty halls, mingling with the distant, anguished cries of prisoners long gone. Shadows twisted unnaturally, stretching across the walls and ceilings like living entities. Suddenly, a sharp, cold gust of wind slammed into him, knocking his flashlight to the floor. It flickered wildly, illuminating a figure that wasn't there a moment ago. A man in ragged prison clothing, floating inches above the ground, eyes black voids. Ethan froze. His voice caught in his throat as the figure whispered, almost mocking him, "Why are you here? You don't belong." Objects began moving violently. Books flew from shelves, chairs toppled, and the iron bars of the cells rattled as if invisible hands were shaking them. Ethan tried to step back, but the shadows seemed to twist and block his path. The floorboards creaked under weight that wasn't his own. He turned the corner and saw the warden's office door, its wood warped and blackened by age. A dim light pulsed from inside. Gathering courage, Ethan pushed the door open. The room was empty, except for an old desk covered in dust. Papers fluttered without wind, and the shadows of prisoners seemed to dance across the walls. A low, guttural whisper rose from the floorboards. "You can't leave. You are part of us now." Ethan's breath came in short, ragged gasps. The room felt alive. He could hear chains rattling, footsteps pacing, whispers overlapping into a cacophony of terror. Suddenly a figure materialized directly in front of him. A tall, gaunt prisoner with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. Ethan stumbled backward, tripping over the desk. The figure raised a hand, pointing directly at him. He felt a cold pressure, like invisible fingers pressing against his chest. Panic surged, and his instincts screamed at him to run. He bolted toward the hallway, but every corridor now seemed different, twisted and warped. Shadows lunged at him from the walls. Whispering voices taunted him. "Turn back. You cannot escape." Ethan's flashlight flickered again, and he saw a mass of ghostly figures surrounding him, their hollow eyes locked onto him. They moved as one, gliding silently but rapidly, closing in from all sides. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting like the prison itself was alive. Desperate, Ethan remembered the emergency exit signs. He sprinted toward a distant glow, dodging flying objects and shadowy hands that seemed to claw at him. His camera flew from his hand, shattering on the floor. But he didn't stop. He could feel the presence of the penitentiary pressing in from every side. Finally, he reached a stairwell that led to the outside. The air was slightly warmer here, and the whispering voices grew distant. But as he ascended, a pale, ghostly figure appeared at the top of the stairs, blocking the exit. Its eyes were voids, its face twisted in a silent scream. Ethan froze, heart hammering, and for a moment thought it was the end. Then, summoning every ounce of courage, he leapt past the figure and tumbled out of the stairwell. The cold night air hit his face. He scrambled to his feet, looking back. The penitentiary stood silent, its Gothic walls looming ominously, as if nothing had happened. But Ethan knew better. He had survived, but the prison's dark presence would follow him forever. Ethan stumbled into the cold night air, gasping for breath. The prison loomed behind him, dark and silent. Yet he could feel its presence lingering, like a shadow clinging to his very soul. He leaned against a street lamp, trembling, trying to calm his racing heart. Every instinct told him to run, but curiosity and disbelief kept him rooted to the spot for a moment longer. Looking back, he thought he saw movement in the upper windows of the penitentiary. Figures pressing their pale faces against the glass, whispering in voices only the wind could carry. He shivered, realizing the whispers weren't gone. They had followed him outside, echoing in the darkness. Determined to escape the prison's grasp, Ethan ran down the empty streets of Philadelphia. He passed flickering streetlights and abandoned alleys, every shadow and sound making him jump. In the distance, the penitentiary remained, an ominous silhouette against the night sky. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Hours later, he reached his hotel room, locked the door, and collapsed onto the bed. His camera lay in pieces on the floor, the footage partially corrupted. Yet, in the faint images, he could see ghostly figures emerging from walls, shadows moving independently, and pale faces staring directly at him. He realized that some of the spirits had followed him into the footage, leaving their mark as if the penitentiary's horrors extended beyond its walls. Sleep didn't come. Ethan spent the night reviewing the images, hearing faint whispers and the distant creak of floorboards. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the gaunt prisoners, their hollow eyes and twisted faces. The penitentiary had left a mark on him, one that would never fade. Days passed, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The shadows seemed to linger in his apartment, subtle at first, then unmistakable. He knew the Eastern State Penitentiary hadn't let him go. It was a living nightmare, a prison not just of stone and iron, but of souls trapped in eternal torment. Despite the fear, Ethan vowed to return one day. He needed to understand the true nature of the penitentiary, to confront the darkness that had haunted so many. But for now, he stayed away, sharing his story with the world, warning others. Some places in the world aren't abandoned. They're alive, and they hunger for those who dare enter. The Eastern State Penitentiary is one of those places. If you thought that was terrifying, remember, the stories are real, and the haunted places of the world are waiting. Subscribe to MR Ghost for more chilling tales from America and beyond. Turn on notifications and join us as we explore the unknown, the haunted, and the supernatural. Mr. Ghost, where fear comes alive and legends never die.